So, is PVC toxic? Is it something that we should be worrying about when we make enclosures? So, I'm a polymer chemist. I have an associate's in physics, a bachelor's in polymer chemistry focused on medical tech. I studied how to target cancer cells and Zika and Ebola, and I had to learn plastics, manufacturing, all that stuff. That was part of the arrangement. So I'm far beyond what most plastic people would be, especially with the physics degree. Understanding that, let's dive into this and understand. Polymer means poly as many and mer the same molecule. Many of the same molecule. So actually, DNA is a polymer. So I studied that. I studied the actual twisting of proteins and stuff, of which does have a massive impact on the human body. It's one way that we've actually found to locate Alzheimer's earlier, is that there'll actually be a triangle formed inside your brain somewhere where one of the proteins has twisted weirdly, and it's actually created dipole moments that actually connect other ones together, and it creates a living triangle to where it's not good for us. It's what initially causes friggin' Alzheimer's. But we're talking about polyvinyl chloride board. So let's see what some of the issues that people have with it. Infinity pool here so the poison plastic is the largest and fastest growing 40 blah 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 blah. So although PVC is flame resistant, PVC products release toxic hydrogen chloride gas when heated. This corrosive gases can spread faster than fumes, tripling buildings' occupants before they have a chance to escape. Hydrogen chloride gas is lethal when inhaled. It is unusual for people to catch building fires to be killed by fumes. So the fumes have killed people. Like, that's just bottom line. Okay. Contains dangerous. And that's the thing here. You got to look at the additives. Additives change physical properties. So it really does become a health risk. Adding something can lower the temperature range, stuff like that. But manufacturing also affects a lot of that stuff too. So, source of pollutants. There's such things as microplastics. So they've been getting in the blood system of everything on Earth. So that is an issue. But you can deal with that. Development by interfering with natural hormones functions, have leaked to birth defects, baby boy, like that. So polyvinyl is not used. This toxic additive can leak out and evaporate into the air over time, posing unnecessarily dangerous to children. So this is basically saying it's the additives. And kind of makes sense. Can it cause cancer? Not directly. Safe for home water. Yeah, it's actually quite resistant. I wouldn't go spilling Coca-Cola on it because it can. There's a reason why we use it in all sorts of stuff. Okay, environmental concerns. See, this is because it's non-biodegradable here. What we want to make sure that we do is if you're cutting it, and like I made my own, and I had to cut the boards. And what I do is I like to do it inside somewhere where it's actually ventilated, like having a massive door open. And so then what you do is you vacuum it up. You make sure that there's nothing for an animal to eat. Make sure there's nothing there to do. You want to clean up the site as best as you can to make sure that it doesn't get into the environment. It's chemically resistant, but if you get a strong enough base or acid, anything's. Bases are actually worse than acids, surprisingly, because an acid wants to, I believe it, the acid wants to take an electron because it's electron deficient. So it actually has to pull that electron from something else, whereas a base gives electron. So it's more than freely willing to give you an electron and change the properties. Recycle organic. I mean, it's such a reusable product. It's wonderful. No, the PVC smell is not toxic. However, when it's burned, and see, this is something we're going to get into. So this is a safety data sheet, an SDS. And here's one for just polychloride. And so you go down through here, hazard identifications, not classified as dangerous according to criteria, not classified. Other hazards, fire, fine dust is exposed with air, heat product causes burns. And so this is 99% polychloride, polyvinyl chloride. So we've got these, blah, 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 on heating, irritation, throat. I mean, don't breathe it in. If you can get a ventilator, that's fine. That's if you have to cut it. If you're not cutting it, then you're fine. And so let's go down here. Precautions. Avoid risking dust against electric sampling methods. You're not going to find a pH for this thing anyways, but it does have a pH in a way if it were to be liquefied. So here's your properties. So then kinetic viscosity, explosive. So melting point is 170 C to 200 C, 170 C Celsius. And so we have Fahrenheit, 338 degrees Fahrenheit for a melting point for just poly. That changes when you add additives. Vapor, not data collected, pH isn't really softening point. 70 to 80, so 158 is what it's saying for a softening point. Now that softening point is probably where you're going to start seeing fumes and stuff coming up from it. If it has fumes, it's probably where it starts, if it does, because it's starting to break bonds, possibly. So it has chemical resistance, fire retardant properties, creep properties. That means like sagging, like it just kind of, yeah. So this is something you will not need to know. PVC strength, electrical insulation, distortion, spec gravity. Since the main chain of polymer is made by a single bonds of carbon atoms, has excellent resistance as with general purpose. Yeah, your carbon atoms often, that's why they're used in nature. That's why nature uses them so well, is because they're structurally sound. They actually have, it's harder to get them off there because they're more balanced to acids, alkaloids, and other organic chemicals. See, it says acids, alkaloids, and almost all other organic chemicals. It doesn't say bases. Bases are quite harsh. So here's the board, the trim board sheet. And I believe this is for a company. So let's look. The reason why this is not the same, and this is probably more what you're going to deal with actually using boards. So you have the polyvinyl chloride, titanium dioxide, and calcium carbonate. Okay, so that changes the properties. Why aren't you showing me other things here? I know it's here though. So there's got to be more here. I just thought there was. Melting point, that should have been measured. Yeah. And so that's a little bit of a concern. So let's see. So this is also PVC material safety data sheet. So rigid vinyl sheets. So these are also, besides those other things, storage, saying the same thing, physical boiling point, heat deflection. So 62 to 143.6. So boiling point, blah, 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 flash point. Yeah, see, begins above thermo decomposition, begins above 150 caused by fire. So once again, 150 is 302 Fahrenheit. And so that's saying that thermodecomposition. So it really starts breaking down at 302. So as we look back at this one though, we see, like I said, the heat. Oh no, the heat deflection, that's a different measurement. That's not the measurement you want to use. Heat deflection's measured differently. As we see here, you know, my recommendation, like I said, as long as you're not getting, because you really need to know what's additive to it so you can figure out where that is. And so, yeah, as long as it's a board, heat, as a physicist, you know, most people think heat, well, it heats up. Oh, no. Me, it's okay. No, it's heating and cooling at the same exact time. What's actually happening is that as it heats that up, if you have air flowing over the top, it's cooling that board down as well. So that heat is actually dispersing through the board, cooling it down. So if your temperature at touch is 140, you are not getting 140 degrees in that board. That's not how it works. Heat is a radiation. It radiates out is how you should see it. And if you're looking at it like that, then as long as you have air flowing through there, it's not. So yes, if you're not getting over 140 degrees, I would say, that's just how I looked at it. I mean, if you're not getting over 140 degrees, it's highly unlikely that you're getting the fumes. But if you have lead in it, then it changes everything. And we have to look at how much that is. So as long as it's not getting over 140, I'm not worried. Like it's just not a worry for me at all that it's going to leak out. Now, if you have a fire in the building, a fire, yeah, you melt that stuff down at 200 and something. It was over 300 degrees. Then you're going to get toxic fumes throughout the place. and it's probably going to kill everything. Yes. So don't do that. And be careful with bases. If the thing is labeled as a base, then maybe be careful with it. But that just kind of depends. Like, there's so many things that go through this. As you add additives, it can lower or heighten the actual boiling point. And so there's where your toxicity is. It's in the additives, not necessarily the PVC. And so if you want to try to figure out the manufacturing of such things, so you really have to get up there. So understanding this, it's tough because you don't often get all the information that you should, but it's one of those things. It's microplastics are a thing. You should vacuum. You should clean up your site beyond fantastic. Make sure there's nothing for your animals to eat or animals outside to eat at your construction site. Don't just leave it, because then it's not biodegradable. It can actually, then it becomes toxic, very toxic when animals eat it and stuff like that. And I don't think it's included in the microplastics. I don't think that's how that works. But that is a thing that happens. And so as long as you're not getting to 140 degrees in your enclosure, there really shouldn't be anything to worry about. Maybe if your substrate is really base, which is highly unlikely that you're going to get a 10 or above on your base here. Like, it's just that, no. That's just not how that's likely to work in this. I mean, you might get 8 point something in your garden. Oftentimes that's actually something that you have to consider when working with vegetables and stuff. It's probably one of the reasons why things don't grow in certain people's gardens, because they don't actually take in the pH level of the substrate. And so in their enclosures, when they have the pH level in there, it doesn't work out right because they're not correct. So that's one thing to go by. So yeah, PVC is like, it's one of those weird things where, depending on the additives, if there's no real additives in there, or the additives aren't that bad, then you have to hit a super high temperature, and then it's deadly. Complete deadliness. If you do not hit a high temperature, not really something to worry about. Not at all. Now, if you have a bunch of lead and stuff in there, yeah. But that's not likely. Because that's the interesting thing is, when you manufacture it, you probably want the least amount of additives that you can have in there, because that's less, depending on the process you use. You might have to do an additive that gets released during the process to keep things apart, but it's just nowhere near toxicity that people think. Now, polyvinyl flooring, I don't know, because it's the chloride. So once again, it probably depends on the additives that are used in it. So that's the main thing. Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you have any questions on anything, give me a holler. I'm more than happy to. I've just seen this question go out so much that it's honestly ridiculous a little bit. Because, I mean, when you think about it, I use PVC over wood because it's going to last like 1,000 times longer. And I don't have dogs or anything that'll knock off lamps. So as long as nobody comes in my house and starts knocking shit off, starting fires, I'm pretty okay with that. Now, I mean, if you have heat tape that's super hot on it, like I said, around 140 degrees, then maybe that'll be an issue. And that's the thing, is I'm saying 140 when we saw, 150-ish. So 140 is just a safe point. If you're not getting there, you're probably not getting toxic fumes out of it. But the longevity of it is worth a lot, and it actually costs more to be poor than it does to be rich. So I spent the extra money because I could build an enclosure for $100. Like, that's not even a thing. I just go buy the boards, put it together. It's not a problem, but it's not going to last. When I spend, $200, it's going to outlast me. And that's what I want, because it's actually more expensive to be poor. So even though you save money, you don't save money in the long run. And that sucks. That's bullshit, because that's just straight out bullshit. But let's just remember that if you need something, give me a holler. I am more than happy to work with people. I love working with people that actually want to work with you. If you think that I'm wrong and that you want to address it, send me a paper. Don't just say I'm wrong and that you know it. Send me a paper saying that I'm wrong, and I will address it. But remember, it's the additives that get leaked, not the PVC itself. But the PVC, once it burns, it is deadly. But it burns at like 300 degrees. So you really need a fire. And they're not going to start a fire. So mixing boards like PVC and wood is not okay, because then you've increased. Wood could start a fire. That's one reason why I don't want to use wood, because I can't be home all the time. So if it starts fire, then all my animals die. And I'm not okay with that. So let's just keep that in mind and be safe. We're in this for the animals. And I'm a polymer chemist, and this has been a talk on PVC is safe for enclosures. Yes. Yeah, they are. And it would be very helpful for manufacturers to tell us what's in the fucking boards. What's in the boards? Thank you, guys. I love you guys.